we're going to have Mr. Kweku Rickard-Hagan, the Member of Parliament for Cape Coast South, and has been chosen as the parliamentary candidate for his party, the NDC, to contest whoever the NPP and the other parties will come up with. But that will be when we have the parliamentary elections in 2020. This time we're talking the budget. He's also been a former trade deputy minister, and so he knows the ins and outs, having also working in banking and all the experiences. So we'll be hosting him next. Make sure that you TV, and then let us know what you think. We'll have him, and then we'll continue with the discussions. In the meantime, please get us going. And when you get interactive, all the uploads that you tend to watch, let us know what you think about the content of the uploads. And then the coverage that you're watching as well, let us know what you think. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.
Right, and that's Roland interacting with Joe Jackson of Dalex Finance. There are more interactions to come your way from Parliament as we gear up for the budget for 2020. You've been sending through your comments on social media, and as you can see, these are some images, live images from the House, the chamber, as they prepare for the arrival of the Finance Minister. Many members of Parliament already seated and awaiting the arrival of the Finance Minister. The Speaker, of course, will come in first, many other dignitaries, and then the Finance Minister will come in and the budget will be read. Right, you can see that it's quite a bustle of activity. MPs walking across to greet each other. That's another thing that many Ghanaians often don't pay attention to. Exactly how close and friendly these MPs are with each other, no matter which side of the political divide they are on. And you find the rank and file and the followers and foot soldiers tend to be so acrimonious towards each other when the people they are following are best of friends. So there they go, exchanging greetings and having a bit of banter ahead of the reading of the budget. At this point, they're probably deciding amongst the minority what sort of placards they will be flashing during the reading of the budget. It's become a tradition now that both sides actually will flash placards and have chants and so forth. Depending on how disruptive they get, you might see some interesting captions being flashed about by the MPs in protest against one thing or the other. So, of course, at the moment, they're just settling in, getting ready for the reading of the budget, just, you know, reacquainting themselves with each other as they prepare for the arrival of the Speaker and other dignitaries. We'll bring you every moment of the reading of the budget live. But in the meantime, let's read a few of your messages before we quickly go back to Parliament. Maybe two of these messages, and then we'll go back. So this one says, please, we have only paper engineers. Theirs is luxury and not people's interest. They ride in V8s and the contractor does what he wants. Nobody takes them on for the poor work done. You are the same people that will criticize government if they take them on. Thomas in Accra sends that message through to us. Thank you, Thomas, for your message. I think we can join Roland now. He's about to engage Kweku Rickard-Hagan, who's a former deputy finance minister.
Finance minister, government about excessively what has been done by way of the economy, etc. And the latest has been about so-called massaging of figures. Why did you come to that conclusion?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers. Well, what we are doing is providing a credible alternative to the government. We are in opposition need to provide a credible and constructive opposition. And so basically we are doing our job. This is what the taxpayer pays us for, to be at the heels of the government, to make sure that anything that is being done that is not in the interest of the country, we actually check it. So I can, the government can be shouting and screaming, but we are actually providing our constitutional, right or work in terms of being a check of the government, especially in matters of finance, which is basically the anchor of the whole economy. I mean, the things we are talking about, and then you mentioned cooking of figures and all that. My expectation in this budget is actually not much, in a sense that they have read budget year after year with so many promises and so many expectations, and most of them have not been fulfilled.
But you've been listening to the World Bank, the other Bretton Woods institutions.
Well, let me tell you
They've been giving great accolades.
Well, what do you
They've met the Finance Committee of Parliament, and it looks like their impressions about how government has been able to consolidate the fiscal space
and let me tell you,
tremendous.
Let me tell you where that is coming from, and let him tell you why the government is taking credit where credit is not due. Look, these things you are talking about, the fiscal discipline and all the things we have achieved today, including the macroeconomic growth that you are seeing, Ghana being one of the fastest growing, started from somewhere. These things started from the NDC under His Excellency President Mahama, where tough decisions were taken, unpopular but necessary decisions were taken. One of them, which you guys basically, strangle us for, taking the country into IMF. And this government came in to complete it. So the fiscal discipline that you are seeing, in addition to the Fiscal Responsibility Act and the Public Financial Management Act, has come together to put us where we are today. If you look at the economic, look, the rule of thumb is that economic policies, serious economic policies, usually takes about 2 or 3 years to manifest. It doesn't take a year, or it doesn't take. So if we are benefiting from the economy today, it's as a result of tough decisions that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama took, taking us to the
obviously
IMF,
it has to be
taking us to the IMF,
it has to be the current government that took decisions in the way it spent its own appropriations.
Well, the rules were there. The rules, when we went to the IMF, were there. The things that you have to do. Don't spend your deficit. Cut the amount of money you are borrowing. These were all done under the IMF. And it's the IMF policy that it's like coming to take a boat that has already been built and steering it to sea and saying that you are the best. So
you're saying government should rather be giving credit to
some credit
for which you were Deputy Finance Minister.
Absolutely. And the investment. Look, when we were in government, our receipt for oil revenue was about 900 million. Today, it's 5 billion. Where is that 5 billion coming from? What investment has this current government made in terms of the oil sector to be harvesting what they are having today? It's as a result of the investment that His Excellency John Mahama made in difficult times when many people did not agree with what we were doing. Those investments are yielding results today, and credit should be given where credit is due. I'm not saying they haven't done anything, but they shouldn't be taking 100% credit of what is happening, because what is happening actually started somewhere. My worry in this budget is that the government continues to promise, as they have done in previous budget, promise upon promise and not delivering them. Also, my fear, and they have said they are not going to do that, as I've just, it has 5 years in terms of a fiscal discipline or fiscal responsibility to be where we are today, starting from the NDC, taking the country to the IMF.
And you have fears. You have a certain phobia.
My fear
it will all
is that
roll
in
back.
an election year, this government, as a result of a knee-jerk reaction, because of the outcries from the people.
But we have a 5% gap within which cap within which.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. That they will try. That's where the massaging of figures and creative is coming from. In order to stay within the 5% cap in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, they will try to stay in there at all costs. We know that the deficit is going beyond 5%. But figures are being massaged. In accounting, they call it creative. Creative is not a good word in accounting. Creative accounting, to be able to achieve that. How can you spend billions of money in destroying banks, in collapsing banks, and say that those items will not be added to expenditure? But the gains you get from it is a revenue. What are you trying to do? You are trying to suppress the deficit so you stay within the capping. That is one creative accounting. When you borrow money and you decide that you are going to disguise that borrowing and not call it borrowing by barter and all sorts of words. When that borrowing is backed with sovereign balance sheet, and it should be added to the national debt, and you don't, even though we have a rebased economy which has given you room to borrow, what are you trying to do? You are trying to suppress the debt as a percentage of GDP to make you look good. And this will come home to roost eventually.
To make sure that they fall in line and within the numbers.
And we will take the finance minister on if he comes with figures that we don't think.
What's your reaction to, Mr. Hussaini, what's your reaction to Mr. Rickard Hagen's own submissions here? It looks like it seems to be the trend running through the shadow finance observers and then also members of the minority in parliament.
Roland, those are very interesting observations coming from the minority in parliament. First of all, my senior colleague here, Honorable Hagan, is telling us that IMF had rules that limited the deficit to 5% per annum. In 2016, we were under IMF conditionalities, yet they left us with a deficit of 9.3. Where was IMF? If those were the rules, how come they left us with a deficit of 9.3? Today, we are not just, it's not just rhetoric, it's not just things that we are saying. We have passed an act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and we are limiting it to 5%, and that is exactly what we are doing. Now they are telling us about creative accounting. We are saying that as of September, our deficit is at 4.6, and we are going to ensure that the acts that we have passed as a party in government, the acts that we have passed in this parliament, we are going to stay within that range at all costs. And now they are shouting all over the place, creative accounting. What brought about this creative accounting? It's a result of their ineptness in managing the financial sector. Oh, I was very quiet when you were speaking. No. Let me address the issue.
All right.
As a result of their ineptness in managing the financial sector, we have had to come to do what everybody has agreed, a cleanup, which was very necessary for us as a nation to undertake. And that is what we are doing. It is costing us now over 13 billion, close to 14 billion. And you are asking that we put this in our annual budget. How can that be? Let me break this down to the barest minimum. A budget has three sort of First is your revenues, which are your inflows. Second is the outflows, which are your whatever you're going to use your inflows for. The third one is whether or not your outflows and your inflows balance, and there's a zero. If there is a surplus, what are you going to do with the surplus? If there's a deficit, what are you going to do with it? If you live with your family, between you, your wife, and your children, you have a budget. It is going to take care of your normal incomes. It is going to take care of your normal expenditures. And then if there's a shortfall or a surplus, you decide what you're going to do. But in this same budget, if you want your annual budget to contain a catastrophe that happened, that got your house broken, a catastrophe that happened, that got your most expensive assets, your car, which crashed.
Which you're going to use your revenues or wherever you're going to get funding to sort out.
Certainly, your normal budget is
definitely has to be. It definitely has to be part of your budget.
It's an extraordinary item. It is an extraordinary item, and so you have to treat it as an extraordinary item. If you put this large expenditure in your budget, what is going to happen? It's going to throw everything out of gear. Is that what we want as a nation? Once they were in government, if they had taken care and had been disciplined with our financial sector, we wouldn't have spent close to 14 billion doing this cleanup, and then we wouldn't be here talking about below the line or above the line treatment of the banking sector mess. Energy sector. They left us with the energy sector, which has capacity of close to 2,500 in excess. It is costing the economy $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year. We in government, it is not very easy to go around some of these negotiations. Why did they go on signing contract after contract, even when we had hit our requirement with the required surplus of 20%? Why? Because of the trouble that was in this IPP contracts. And these are issues that we have to deal with in budgets day in, day out. These are things that we inherited. They keep telling us that, how we performed in government prior to 2016. It is an indication of where we have to go as a nation. Where we are coming from is a very good indication, and that is what we keep reminding them. Today, we have passed the law. We are going to stay within the 5% deficit limit, and that is what the president is told the nation. That is what the finance minister is committed to. And as a party in government, that is what we are committed to, and that is exactly what is going to happen. Whether or not we're treating issues, creative accounting, above the line, below the line, these are issues that we inherited from them. We are dealing with them, and we will treat them as normally should be treated.
But the reality is that since 2012, which the deficit was huge, we've seen subsequently efforts being made. 2013, 14, subsequently now we're here. And the deficit has been managed as a result of the consolidation. In each year, budgetary year, where we have elections in the Fourth Republic, we've always had serious deficits. We have a cap of 5% through a law. We say we are committed. If you look at the ongoing actions, knowing that roads and the capital expenditure that seem to have been connected with it or should have been connected over the last 3 years of an administration have not been made until now, we'll see more roads because outside the space of expenditure, there are social agitations. And the reality is that government will have to satisfy those social agitations. That will be more expenditure. What do you see?
That is exactly what I've just explained to you earlier on. That one of the things we are going to keep our eye on is for the government not to result in a knee-jerk reaction, trying to address the social concerns that people are agitating about for the simple reason that we are in an election year, and do something that in the long run will get us back into where we were, that we have worked in the last 5 years. Let me correct my honorable, brother about certain things that he has said that are inaccurate. And this things started from the president himself about the amount of deficit they met and all that. And then talking about creative accounting, which he says that they are doing creative accounting as a result of the policies we implemented. I mean, I will not hold my honorable friends maybe limited understanding on the issue.
The limited understanding of the issue. I'm addressing this as I didn't admit that we're trading. I said we're given the right. We are right. No, once you invite me in there, I think
you invited me.
I didn't admit that we are giving the correct treatment to those transactions.
Can I speak? You talked about creative accounting that you are doing as a result of what we have done. And I'm telling you that
I didn't talk about creative accounting. I said
you're saying there's nothing like creative accounting.
Nothing like creative
and the structure is what it is.
Right treatment to those
and that is what I've just told you. So they obviously want to be careful. Look, how can you? They throw figures about. He just talked about 9.3% deficit. The economy of Ghana in 2016 was 168.7 billion Ghana cedis. We had a deficit in nominal terms of 13.1 billion. When you calculate that, that doesn't give you 9.3. Okay? That gives you in excess, in about 7% or 7.8%. If you do it based on the rebasing, the Ghana's economy in 2016, based on the rebase figure, is 215 billion. The nominal deficit doesn't change. That brings you to 6.1. Where is the 9% coming from? They are trying to use figures that will make them look good. And as I said, the effort to reduce the deficit did not start when NPP came to power. It started as a result of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama taking Ghana to the IMF, which was a necessary decision but uncomfortable, for many people. And that is where it started. So credit and economic, as I said, major economic policies, especially fiscal in nature, monetary policies take much shorter time. But fiscal policies takes about 2 to 3 years to manifest. Therefore, the benefits that these guys are harvesting today was not as a result of anything they've done.
You made that point.
He's talking about what is causing the growth at the moment. Much of it, as we know, is coming from the oil sector. Ask them, what investment have you put in the oil sector since you came in to be getting 5 billion? You are talking about power sector. The power sector, whether you like it or not, is NDC government under Dramani Mahama who put in the investment that of what we are enjoying today. Tell me, which one single megawatt have you added to the best you have done is to...
But we already have in excess. Why should we add?
Exactly. So
that we're even paying for.
Give credit where credit is due. You are lucky to come and meet an excess. When we came to office, we didn't have an excess. We had to work basically by bringing Ghana to where we are today. And you are enjoying it. The best you could do is to make a mess with the PDS. You don't know whether you are doing a condition precedent or condition subsequent. That is the best you have done in the energy sector. So what real contribution have you put in to take credit for the economic growth we are having, or even the discipline in terms of the fiscal space, fiscal responsibility that we have, other than just steering the ship, which has been handed over to you?
Yeah, point made. And you talk about the deficit.
Let me before we come to the deficit. You see, when my senior colleague is talking about us not adding a megawatt to our energy or energy production, I think that is absurd. That is very absurd that the NDC today will be asking us how many megawatts we've added to our stock when we already have so much excess of over 2,000 megawatts, which is costing us $1 billion a year. And you want us to add up to it, so we add up to the cost that we are already expending. It is very absurd that the NDC has the impudence. It is very absurd that the NDC today has the impudence to ask NPP how much we've added to our megawatts when we already have in excess of 2,000 today. The second one is today is asking us how much investment we made in our oil sector. You remember when we discovered oil? It was 2007. It was 2007, and first oil was in 2011. We discovered oil in 2000. Prior to 2007, do you remember what GNPC was doing? They were into telecoms. They were into banana plantations. They were into renting of rigs in Angola. It was President
the current PIAG report also said GNPC is involved in expenditure. Let me make my point. That is also not linked to its core business. That is expensive. But I'm telling you that if President Kufuor had not refocused GNPC, prior to 2007, I'm sure today we will not be sitting here talking about oil. Let me ask you the question.
Yeah, please.
Let me ask you the question.
No. Give us credit for
it. Yes, we found oil in 69. You pulled out that in Parliament that it was a
No, please.
Even in 2007, you laughed at us.
Can I have your attention?
Today, you are telling us that you invested in oil.
Mr. Hussaini,
please.
If you listen to all the analysts from academia, from think tanks, you get to find that the panacea to all the difficulties we're facing on the loaded social side of expenditure on the budget that we've seen since 2017 is raising enough revenue. And the phrase has been that we intend expanding the tax nets. So we did a launch of a GPS system that will be connected to National Identification Authority, etc. We want to consolidate and do real-time verifications with TIN and all that. We've been having shortfalls in revenue. Our expenditure is up. We're using 40% of whatever it is that we generate to pay for a number of things, and subsequently even using that for wage bills and all that. What solutions should we be seeing in the next budget that those who haven't been covered in the net will be captured?
I think that we have started running policies. And my senior colleague here told you that it takes 2 to 3 years for you to feel the impact of some of those policies. Oh, of course, that is sacrosanct. That is sacrosanct. Similarly, you will tell us that you had the biggest cocoa production in 2010, when actually cocoa trees are not planted and grown in 1 year. You see, government is continual. When you make a statement, like it takes 2 to 3 years, I agree with you. I agree with you because that is so. Today we have started digitizing the system. We have the GPS addressing system. Now people are known. Today we have the TIN numbers. You want a driving license, you need a TIN number. So it will get to a point when we are finishing consolidating, we have the NIA going round. By the time we are done with the NIA, people have TIN numbers. People have digital addresses. We know where they are. And so we can go after them for their taxes. Now we are talking about property taxes. It's been a long time since this has been on the table. But because
since your childhood, I think.
Since my childhood, actually. I consent to that.
And now you're an adult.
Since I knew what economics was, we've been talking about expanding the tax net. In reality, what have we done as a nation? Look, and the case even gets worse. Look, Similar countries within the sub-region have their tax revenue relative to GDP hovering between 18 and 20%. Ghana today is doing 12.5%. It means that there is some element of 8% of tax revenue hidden somewhere, and that is what we have to go after. We have done something. Look at GRA today. There's new leadership to GRA because they're bringing in new energy. So new things will be happening until we are able to chalk the revenues that we want to do. And as a government, we will continue. Let's wait for the budget to be read. You'll see the new things that the government wants to do. But already we are saying that there are not going to be
What should we be seeing by way of meeting our revenue targets?
You see, the problem we have with revenue mobilization doesn't only rest with this government. What we have failed to do as a country is that we have not been able to, whatever macroeconomic gains that we have never been able to translate that into the real economy. Now, you can talk about expanding the tax net, which is one of the ways to bring in more revenue, but fundamentally, if your real economy is not solid enough, you are not going to get the taxes. When companies are being collapsed and jobs are being lost, you are not going to get the revenue. So this is what the fundamental, when you have collapsed, 437 financial, think about it. In a small economy like Ghana,
that is not true.
You have collapsed. It's not
that is not, it is not true.
Now universal
banks, it is not true. It is not true.
Collapsed.
It is not true.
347.
It is not true.
Microfinance firms have been collapsed.
A lot of these entities were not even in operation.
39
a lot of this,
from the Bank of Ghana.
Yes, but I'm telling you that.
Can you let him make his submission?
Okay, please,
I think you are heckling him.
Let's go on.
39 micro credit companies have been collapsed. 15 savings and loans companies have been collapsed.
And then we have the recent one.
53 fund management companies have been collapsed.
21 of which we had closed already.
8 finance houses have been collapsed. 2 non-banking institutions. When you put it together, if you do the maths, that is 437 medium.
And your point is what?
Size.
That they employ people?
My point is that when the real economy is not functioning, you will not be able to realize the revenue. You can expand the tax net when people are not working, when companies have been collapsed. It doesn't matter how big you expand the tax net, you're not going to get the revenue. So if you claim that you have fixed the fundamentals of the economy as the president is starting around, even though I'm saying that they should not be taking credit for that, translate that into your real economy. When you're able to do that, then you begin to realize the revenues that you are at the moment.
And the truth is that if you look at the players or the captured population in the real economy, they are more than those who are up there, definitely.
Definitely.
And that's where the trouble is.
That is part of the trouble.
Yeah.
It's the trouble. It's more than that, but that's part of it. If we, you see, we have a medium to long term. If you it works even with the revenue. There are short-term measures like expanding your tax net, which you can do to rake in more revenue. But there's a long term, and that is fixing your real economy. That is where jobs are created. It's when people are working, that's when they pay taxes. When companies have not been collapsed and they are in existence and producing, that is when you close 437 financial institutions in this country, apart from the liquidity challenges that you have created and the systemic risk that you have created in the banking sector, you are also collapsing the economy. And as we said, it takes about 2 to 3 years for you to see some of this impact. And within the next 2 to 3 years, you will begin to see how the collapse of these banks are going to be hurting Ghana's economy.
Today, we had to take a decision as a result of the financial sector that we inherited, whether to make a decision between the 3,000 or so jobs that have been lost and the deposits of 2.4.
The jobs are more than 3,000.
I'm telling you that they lost those that were lost.
Okay.
In total, about 5,000. CBG today is employing.
Now you're talking. You said 5,000. Initially, you said 3,000.
We had to. I'm saying that 3,000 had been lost. 2,000 had been saved. Who are today working in one way or the other. And we have to make a decisions between their jobs and deposits of a million, over a million Ghanaians. Which one was we going? Where we were going to go by?
You are saving.
The other leg of it is that today look at the reports coming from Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana is saying that our financial sector.
Haven't we rather created a certain panic in the system with the initial announcement?
I mean, the choices there were so limited, given the sector that we inherited. We always need the financial sector to fund what he keeps referring as the real sector. Today, the banks are on their strong footing. Today, they have started lending again. Today, the real sector is getting funding again from the same banks that they collapsed. So this is where we are going. Today, the real sector is picking up again. And when you look at our group, look at oil and non-oil group.
All of you are MPs. Yeah. And I know his constituency very well. Yeah. I know yours very well as well. Right. The people in the real sector of the economy really occupy a chunk of your constituencies. Certainly. And you know the drudgeries that they go through daily. That's it. The ordinary person in the Kotokraba market who, with 3,000 Ghana cedis, maybe collected from UniCredit or something, is the lifeline for her family, now has been denied that source. Somebody in your area also has been denied that source just to do some trading in bananas or something so that I could give 1 cedi or 2 cedi for the child to go to school. And then we go a little up. We have those who are doing just small-scale manufacturing, etc. They really are fed by these institutions. And so we cannot seem to think that we're oblivious of all that, can we?
Roland, could you think of a scenario where one morning we wake up, 1 million people, including the woman who sells tomatoes in Achimota market, who had traded the day before, maybe has some 200, 300 that she trades with, had gone to deposit it in a savings and loans place, and then the following day she wakes up and goes, and then the company is collapsed and her money is gone. With no hope or whatsoever of her recovering her money. What was going to happen to? If this happens to about 2.4 million people,
that
what
wouldn't have happened in a day. He's talking about it would happen in a day,
creative, given where we are.
Being creative about taking the decision.
Look, Roland, let me make a point. Let me make a point. This is the three companies.
We do understand.
This is the three companies.
We do understand that the floor of Parliament is now busy because proceedings have started.
Okay. All right. So I want my brother.
This is the three companies that we are talking about. That
first of all,
some of which 21 of them were not operating. And about all the 53 of them, people were not getting their deposits already. Take the case of GN Bank. The company had already shut down. The company had already shut down.
I love you. You're very feisty.
Yes, it is budget day, and it's a good day.
I want my brother.
Can you see that in my outfit?
Yeah, I can see.
I want my brother and I to do a simple test. Let's go to our constituencies and ask our people whether they are better off today than they were yesterday.
I think that's the reality. That's the real way to measure the sentiment.
That is a real measurement.
You were saying about the banking that they have a limited option. They were just not imaginative enough. It was poorly planned, poorly implemented. Banks that could have been saved were killed for nothing. They spent billions of money to do that.
If the
and
NDC,
that money could have been used
if the NDC, under the watch of the NDC, if they had not watched, if they had not issued banking licenses like selling granules in the market, we wouldn't be where we are today. If the NDC had not gone about issuing bank licenses, like buying granules in the market, we wouldn't be where we are today. So how do you go upstairs, muddy the water, and then come down and then ask us why did you do that?
Well, we have to take you to the floor of Parliament.
It is the ineptness of the NDC that brought us here today.
We also subsequently will transition to the point where, of course, the motion will be called and the finance minister will be telling all of us, but more so members of Parliament. That's what the procedure says. And we'll get to know 2020, what the budget and its content are. Stay with us right here on Joy News.
Thank you, Roland. And boy, what a lively debate that turned out to be. Okay, we'll be going straight into the Chamber of Parliament in just a moment to hear the reading of the budget. It seems everybody is seated. It's about to happen. So very quickly with my guests in the studio, Apia Kusi Adumako and William Kofi Demitia, we're going to wrap up very quickly with one simple question. I'll hear both of your answers to it. As Ghanaians listen to the budget, what should they listen out for to see how next year's expenditure and revenue will affect them?
I think first I want all Ghanaians to manage the expectation on this year's budget. If you look at the Asempa budget of 2017, it wasn't Asempa for people, but for government labeled Asempa. And we've also seen that over the years, government has also been touting its achievement in the macroeconomic environment, but yet there's a huge disconnect between what government touts and then what actually pertains in the market. For example, we talk of the inflation rate and the interest rates going down, but then the people at the real sector of the economy, they don't borrow at 25% or 15% per annum. They go and borrow at microfinance and they pay 10% per month, so 120% a year. So government needs to find out what are the cause of the disconnection. And then I also want to say that government has, touting that we've done well with all this environment, but then jobs creation. If government policy on on transforming the economy is actually working, then private sector should be the one who should have created the jobs, not government coming into the space to create jobs by the setting up of NAPCO. So government setting up of NAPCO is a clear indication that government policies on job creation has failed, and we must admit that. Because this government is a property owning government. Government believes that, economic 101, that create the enabling environment and let private sector take advantage of it and create a decent jobs. But here, you've said you've created it, and yet the private sector cannot create the jobs, and you have rather come in to create the jobs. And so either your figures are wrong, or there is still the figures don't align with the realities on the ground.
That's a thought for the one to think about. William.
Yes. What I think is, again, just picking up from where he left from, we need to have a real connect between the good figures as we see from the macro level translate into the lives of people in the micro level. And that is what we expect to see in this budget. For about 3 budgets we've had running, we have seen an attempt by government to, as it were, make sure that the macro indicators are right. It is now time to translate them into the lives of the people. We ought to see the jobs come up. We ought to see real life improve. And that is what I think that we ought to look at. So in terms of taxes, which I always say has an effect on cost of living, we don't have to see, as it were, an increase in consumption-based taxes. We ought to see an increase in attempts to get taxes on people's incomes. People who previously are supposed to pay and are not paying. We should see more alignment on that, because last year's budget, there were 2 things government said they were going to do to improve revenue. 1, reform the revenue sector, the revenue collection agency, and 2, enforce compliance of tax laws. We want to see how that works out in this budget as well. So those are my expectations.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough, both of you, for making the time to be with us and helping us understand some of what is to come.